really need you to understand that your unhappy hip flexors are correlated to your deep core, and when one is weak, the other is compromised, and vice versa. This is part one of seated leg lifts, how your hip extensors, hip flexors, and deep core all work together or don't. This is also known as hip flexor abdominal coordination, which means that your legs can move freely in your sockets while your pelvis stays sturdy and stable. For simplicity's sake, you can think of the deep core as three separate muscles: the obliques, which are on the sides like suspenders, the lower abdominals, which hold the bottom, and then the multifidus, which runs along the back along our spine. One of the primary jobs of our deep core is to help keep our pelvis sturdy and stable as we're moving in hip flexion and hip extension. Walking is a great example of hip flexion and extension. As we bring our leg forward, we're flexing our hip, and as it comes behind us, we're going into leg extension, meaning our pelvis should stay exactly where it is, the movement being our leg in its socket, which is moving the hip. If your hip flexors are not strong enough to pull your leg as far forward as it needs to, what's going to happen is that other muscles are going to compensate for that, and that often happens in our deep core, meaning we lose pelvic stability as a way to compromise for the lack of strength in our hip flexors to move our leg. Same thing can happen in reverse when it comes to hip extension, where we're going to lose that pelvic stability if those extensors are not strong enough to do their job, compromising other muscles in the process. Adding one final layer to this, because the hip flexors and hip extensors are often antagonists of one another, meaning that they work opposite of each other. Depending on the movement and what we're doing, the flexibility of one is going to impact our ability to strengthen the other. For example, our hip extensors are not flexible enough, it's going to impede our ability to strengthen those hip flexors in certain positions. Seated leg lifts are not only a fantastic way to strengthen the hip flexors, but they're also a great example of how all three of these things work together: the need for deep core stability to hold the pelvis in place, strong hip flexors to lift the leg, and flexible enough hip extensors that those hip flexors can engage and concentrically bring the leg up toward the chest. In part two, I'll show you how these all work together in seated leg lifts with anatomy overlays so that you can visualize what muscles are working, what muscles need to engage, what muscles need to release, etc. I'll see you back here for part two, form and anatomy.